Dreams in which we find ourselves trapped, paralyzed, or unable to speak are among the most haunting and emotionally intense we can experience. They leave behind a lingering sense of helplessness, an echo that stays with us long after waking. For Sigmund Freud, such dreams are not meaningless fragments of imagination, but expressions of deep unconscious conflict. These are not just bad dreams. They are windows into the most vulnerable corners of the mind. To understand why we dream of being trapped or voiceless, Freud would first guide us back to his central premise, that dreams are the disguised fulfillment of repressed wishes. They are coded messages from the unconscious, formed through layers of transformation. The conscious mind may forget or ignore painful truths, but the unconscious never does. It speaks in symbols, and in these symbols, we find the real meaning behind the dream. So what is being symbolized when you dream you're stuck in a room, buried alive, paralyzed in bed, or unable to scream for help? Freud believed that such images reflect more than just physical fear. They are dramatizations of emotional and psychological realities that we might be denying in waking life. In many cases, these dreams point to feelings of being emotionally suffocated, powerless, or unheard. Let's begin with the feeling of being physically trapped in a dream, locked in a room, caught in a maze, stuck underwater, or restrained in some invisible way. Freud would interpret this as a representation of repressed anxiety, often connected to real-life situations where the dreamer feels stuck. These might be relationships, jobs, social expectations, or inner conflicts. The dreamer may not consciously admit to feeling trapped, but the unconscious recognizes the truth and expresses it through the dream. Imagine a person in a difficult marriage. On the surface, they may appear content, even supportive of their partner, but deep within, they may feel emotionally confined. Their identity, desires, and voice may feel stifled. They may not dare to confront this truth while awake. But in sleep, their mind stages a scenario in which they cannot move, escape, or breathe. The dream becomes an emotional mirror of their waking life, showing them what they refuse to feel. This dream symbolism is deeply connected to the concept of resistance in Freud's theory. Resistance refers to the psychological defenses we build to protect ourselves from uncomfortable truths. When we resist acknowledging a problem, our unconscious often finds a way to express it anyway, through dreams. Trapped dreams are among the clearest expressions of this inner conflict. We resist change, but the unconscious keeps pushing us to confront what's real. Now consider dreams in which you try to scream, speak, or call for help, but no sound comes out. This terrifying sensation, described by many as being mute or silenced, in a dream, reveals another layer of repression. According to Freud, the inability to speak in a dream may reflect a real-life inability to express oneself. It might point to feelings of powerlessness, shame, or emotional suppression. The dreamer may feel like their voice doesn't matter, or that it's dangerous to speak their truth. Take, for example, a young man raised in a strict household where emotions were discouraged. He was taught that anger is disrespectful, sadness is weakness, and vulnerability is unacceptable. Over time, he learned to suppress these feelings, not just in public, but in his own mind. But repression does not erase emotion. It only buries it deeper. In his dreams, he finds himself in danger, needing to scream, but nothing comes out. His voice is trapped, just like his emotions. Freud would interpret this as the unconscious, dramatizing the conflict between expression and repression. The man cannot speak in his dream because he cannot speak in life. Not fully, not honestly. The dream forces him to feel the pain of being silenced, making the invisible visible. There is also a biological layer to these dreams. Freud acknowledged that certain physical conditions during sleep, such as sleep paralysis, can influence the content of dreams. In sleep paralysis, the body remains immobile while the mind is partially awake, creating a terrifying sensation of being frozen. Many people who experience sleep paralysis report being unable to move or speak, often accompanied by a heavy presence in the room. Freud would not reduce such dreams to mere biology, but he recognized that the body and psyche are deeply intertwined. Physical states can trigger symbolic dream content, so a person who experiences sleep paralysis might dream of being bound or muted, but the deeper meaning still depends on the emotional and psychological context. The dream still speaks, even when the dreamer cannot. Another critical idea in Freud's interpretation of trapped or voiceless dreams is infantile regression. He believed that many dreams take us back to childhood states, especially those of vulnerability, dependency, and fear. A dream of being trapped might symbolically return us to moments in childhood when we felt powerless, such as being punished, ignored, or abandoned. The child's early experience of being unable to act, explain, or escape is stored deep in the unconscious. Later in life, under stress or emotional pressure, these early memories may reappear in disguised form. The adult may dream of being trapped in a crib-like room, held down or unable to speak, because their psyche is revisiting the original experience of helplessness. These dreams are not random, they are rooted in the emotional history of the self. Freud also emphasized the importance of disguised wish fulfillment in such dreams. This can seem paradoxical. How could being trapped or silenced be the fulfillment of a wish? But the unconscious is not always literal. Sometimes, the wish is not to suffer but to avoid something worse. For instance, someone might dream of being locked in a cage rather than facing a terrifying confrontation in waking life. The dream becomes a symbolic escape, a way to choose paralysis over risk. Similarly, being unable to speak in a dream might symbolize a desire not to reveal a painful truth or a fear of the consequences of honesty. The silence becomes protective. The trap becomes safer than freedom. Freud saw this as the dreamer's inner compromise, painful but functional. There's also the role of symbolic punishment in these dreams. Freud noted that when people experience guilt, especially unconscious guilt, they may dream of suffering as a form of self-punishment. A dreamer who feels they betrayed someone, failed themselves, or violated their values might unconsciously punish themselves by dreaming they're trapped, crushed, or silenced. These dreams become expressions of inner judgment. Of course, Freud would caution us not to overgeneralize. Every dream must be understood in its specific context. Not every trapped dream reflects guilt. Not every silent dream indicates trauma. The key is the associations the dreamer brings. What did the trap feel like? What was happening before and after? Who else was present? How did the dream end? The details matter. The emotional tone matters even more. Another recurring symbol in these dreams is the maze or labyrinth. A dreamer finds themselves wandering endless halls, corridors, tunnels, always searching, never finding an exit. Freud interpreted these images as metaphors for the unconscious mind itself. The dreamer is not just lost in space, they are lost in the psyche. They are navigating the complexity of their own emotions, memories, and fears. To dream of being lost in a labyrinth is to be deep in the process of self-exploration. The exits are unclear because the issues are unresolved. These dreams can feel frustrating, even nightmarish. But Freud believed they also indicate progress. The mind is working, searching, trying to resolve. The dreamer is not standing still. They are moving, even if they feel trapped. Dreams of being trapped or silenced often coincide with waking experiences of emotional suppression. Someone going through a breakup, but hiding their pain, might dream of being sealed in a box. Someone forced to remain silent in a toxic work environment might dream of having their mouth sewn shut. Freud would see these as metaphors for real emotional states. States we hide during the day but reveal in sleep. Sometimes the trap in the dream is other people. A crowd holding you back, a family demanding obedience, a stranger who locks the door. These figures may represent real individuals or internalized parts of the self. For Freud, dream characters often symbolize parts of the dreamer's own mind. The stranger who locks the door might be the part of you that says, "Stay silent," The family might represent societal expectations. In this way, the trap is not just external, it is internalized oppression. When these dreams occur repeatedly, Freud believed they indicate persistent inner conflict. The mind keeps returning to the same theme because it remains unresolved. The unconscious does not give up. It sends the message again and again until the dreamer listens. In therapy, Freud would help dreamers explore the origins of these feelings. When did you first feel this way? Who taught you to silence your voice? What fear lies beneath your paralysis? Through free association, he encouraged patients to speak without censorship, allowing the unconscious to surface in words. In this way, the very symptom, the inability to speak, was healed by speaking. As we continue to explore Freud's interpretation of dreams in which one feels trapped or unable to speak, it's essential to recognize the profound emotional resonance these images carry. They are not accidental byproducts of random neural firing. They are symbols crafted by the unconscious, and every symbol has something to say, even if, in the dream, the dreamer cannot. Freud often emphasized the concept of dream condensation, a mechanism in which multiple thoughts, fears, and desires are compressed into a single image or experience. In the case of trapped or voiceless dreams, this condensation might blend several themes at once: fear of failure, repressed anger, shame, longing for safety, or a desperate need for recognition. The more intense the emotion, the more likely it is to surface through dream imagery that captures helplessness. Think of a person burdened by unspoken grief. Perhaps they lost someone close, but social expectations demand they stay strong. They go through the motions, pretending all is well, but the unconscious doesn't follow these rules. It insists on expressing what the conscious mind suppresses, so they dream of being stuck in a small, dark room, pounding on the walls, screaming, but no one hears. The dream is a protest, a silent scream from within. Freud believed that emotional truth always finds a way to the surface. Even when censored during waking life, it will emerge in dreams, often in dramatic and symbolic form. Dreams of being trapped or voiceless are the psyche's way of demanding attention. Something has been left unresolved, unacknowledged, or unexpressed, and the unconscious will not let it be ignored. There is also the theme of control. In waking life, people often feel the need to control their environment, their image, even their own feelings. But in dreams, control slips away. The masks come off. The dream of being unable to move or speak may symbolize the fear of losing control over one's life, relationships, or inner world. For some, this is terrifying. For others, it may represent a hidden wish to surrender, to be cared for, to let go of responsibilities. Freud recognized this duality. He often wrote about the coexistence of opposing desires in the unconscious. We may long for freedom and fear it at the same time. We may want to speak our truth, but also dread the consequences. The dream does not resolve these tensions. It reveals them. It shows us the knots we've tied in ourselves. In some dreams, the setting itself becomes symbolic. Being trapped in a childhood home, an elevator, a tunnel, or a coffin, each carries its own psychological weight. A childhood home may symbolize unresolved issues from early development. An elevator might represent social mobility or the lack of it. A tunnel may suggest transition, birth, or a passage between states of being. A coffin, of course, evokes death, but Freud would urge us to see it also as a metaphor for emotional numbness, stagnation, or buried desire. It's also important to consider the role of authority figures in such dreams. Many people report being silenced or restrained by faceless guards, teachers, parents, or shadowy figures. These characters often represent internalized authority, the rules, expectations, or prohibitions we have absorbed over time. Freud referred to this as the superego, the moral part of the psyche that governs our sense of right and wrong. When we dream of being punished, silenced, or judged, it may be the superego expressing itself. For example, A woman raised in a strict religious environment may repress her sexuality for years. She dreams of being surrounded by dark-robed figures who forbid her to speak or move. Freud would interpret this not just as fear of external judgment, but as the internal conflict between her desires and her internalized sense of morality. The dream is a confrontation between the id and the superego, desire versus guilt. Some trapped dreams also involve repetition, being stuck in a loop, performing the same action again and again with no resolution. Freud called this the repetition, compulsion, a tendency of the unconscious to replay unresolved trauma in symbolic form. The dreamer may feel doomed to relive the same pattern, as if the dream itself is stuck. Freud believed that by recognizing this pattern, the dreamer might finally break free in waking life. Another concept crucial to understanding these dreams is symbolic substitution. In many cases, the thing we fear most is not shown directly, but disguised through metaphor. Being unable to speak might substitute for feeling emotionally ignored. Being trapped in a car may symbolize being stuck in a life path we didn't choose. Being frozen in place could represent anxiety about making a decision. The unconscious uses substitution to hide the true source of discomfort, but not completely. The clues are there. Freud encouraged his patients to use free association, a method in which the dreamer says whatever comes to mind when thinking about a particular dream image. By associating freely, layers of meaning begin to emerge. The dreamer might start with, "I was stuck in an elevator," and move through memories of school pressure, fear of failure, or parental expectations. The trapped elevator, then, is no longer random. It becomes a container for all those buried pressures. Let's also consider the cultural and personal context of the dreamer. Freud understood that individual history shapes how symbols appear. A dream of being unable to speak will have different nuances for a singer, a politician, or someone who survived abuse. The same image can carry vastly different meanings depending on the dreamer's personal narrative. This is why Freud insisted that interpretation must be personalized, not formulaic. Yet even with this emphasis on the individual, Freud identified universal patterns. He believed that certain dream motifs, like falling, flying, being chased, or being trapped, are archetypal. They appear across cultures, ages, and time periods because they touch on fundamental human experiences. To be trapped is to feel powerless. To be voiceless is to feel erased. These are not just personal emotions. They are shared, even primal. This is why trapped and voiceless dreams are so common. They speak to something deep and universal. They remind us that, despite the appearance of control in daily life, we all carry wounds, fears, and unresolved tensions. Dreams hold a mirror to these hidden layers. Freud also noted that once these dreams are brought into consciousness and discussed openly, especially in a therapeutic setting, their intensity often decreases. It is as if the unconscious is satisfied that the message has been delivered. Once the dreamer acknowledges the feeling of being trapped or silenced, they may begin to regain their sense of agency, even in sleep. This is why the process of dream interpretation is not just analytical, but healing. To understand a dream is to reclaim a part of oneself. The trap loosens. The silence breaks. The dreamer wakes, not just from sleep, but from repression. Freud's legacy in dream analysis lies not in providing fixed answers, but in teaching us how to listen. Dreams don't tell us what to do. They show us where we are stuck, where we are hurting, and where we need to grow. In this way, the dream of being trapped is not just a nightmare, it is a call to freedom. The fear of being silenced may be the fear of confronting one's truth, but as Freud would insist, there is no healing without truth. The unconscious does not forget, and it will keep speaking through dreams, symptoms, and emotions until the conscious mind is ready to hear. By paying attention to dreams of paralysis, silence, and entrapment, we begin to decode the language of the unconscious, and through that process, we move toward self-awareness and liberation. So the next time you wake from a dream in which you couldn't move or speak, don't dismiss it. Ask yourself, what am I not saying? Where in life do I feel trapped? What part of me wants to break free? Freud would remind us that the answer is already inside you, disguised but not hidden, waiting to be heard.